Well, hello everyone and welcome. I'm so thrilled to see you. I'm Kim Salem Jackson. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Good. Little louder? Little louder. All right. Now you can hear me? Wonderful. I too am often not accused for being quiet, even though I'm not the biggest person in the world. So I am Kim Salem Jackson. I am Akamai's CMO, and we are just so thrilled to have you all here today. Whether you're joining us virtually or at our beautiful headquarters, which quite frankly we don't get to use enough, so this warms our hearts to see you here. The Boston Club is such an important organization, and I'm so proud to say Akamai supports and partners with you for events as special as today's. And today's forum is a unique opportunity for the business community and civic leaders like Mayor Wu and Governor Baker to support women leadership across Greater Boston and beyond. Akamai's purpose is to make life better for billions of people, billions of times a day. And that purpose is very much aligned to the mission and values of the Boston Club. Oh, yay! Now we're talking. All right. There's a quote on the Boston Club's website that stands out to me and reads, "We believe diversity and cultural competence are essential leadership skills and is the ability to manage in an ever-changing diverse world." And I couldn't agree more with that statement. Diversity and inclusion are core tenets of Akamai's values and are reflected in so many of the programs and practices that we do, including our focus on pay equity, our focus on creating the largest and most active employee resource group dedicated to women and women leaders of all levels, just like all of you, and our focus and commitment to diversity in our leadership ranks and our board. I am proud to be joined by a very special guest today, Sharon Bowen, Chairman of the New York Stock Exchange and an Akamai board member. So, woo! All right. From an all-black elementary school in Virginia to becoming a law firm partner in 1991, a time when few women or people of color held such roles, to becoming the first African-American commissioner to ever sit on the Commodities Future Trade Commission, to now being the first woman or person of color to chair the New York Stock Exchange. Not too shabby, Ms. Sharon. On a personal level, I am so impressed by Sharon. Since the very first day I met her. On a personal level, I have been so impressed by Sharon since the very first day I met her just over a year ago. Despite Sharon's very hectic schedule, as you can imagine from the little snippet of a bio I shared, she always finds time to engage and advise Akamai leadership on topics spanning from business, women in leadership, diversity, and so many things in between. Today, Sharon will be in a conversation with Wendy Woods, Vice Chair, Social Impact, Climate, and Sustainability, that is a big role, of the Boston Consulting Group, discussing this year's Forum of Women Taking Charge, the economic playbook for the future. But before we welcome Sharon, I'm very excited about that, it is my pleasure to pass the podium to Lisa Pryor, President of the Boston Club. She served as an executive coach and has been featured in Forbes and has a mission to build a more inclusive and productive organization. Lisa, welcome to the podium. And I hope this mic works for you.
Thank you, Kim. My friends, is the path to both business success and a healthy and just society through women's economic empowerment. Imagine, it's 1975. A small group of women in Boston are promoted to the C-suite, but they're barred from having lunch with their male colleagues in a downtown Boston restaurant. Yes, 1975. One day, a woman named Dean made a reservation in her name, like a man, and it was accepted, and she brought her female colleagues. That restaurant has been integrated ever since. The story, these powerful women had made it to the C-suite, but they were not at the table that mattered. They banded together, formed the Boston Club, committed to advancing women to significant leadership positions. And here we are, 46 years later, our 25th corporate salute. Welcome to Women Taking Charge, the economic playbook for the future. Why this topic? Because with so many more women, while progress has been made in leadership positions, we still have an idea, an expectation of what a senior leader looks like. And yet, what are the questions that are being asked in the C-suites and boardrooms around the globe? How are products, services, policies, how are the expectations of leadership behaviors changing in this new world? In the new economy today, agility, adaptability, entrepreneurialism, these are the things that matter. Today, the globe reached a population of 8 billion people. A diverse workforce, hybrid communication, global climate change, these are just some of the opportunities and challenges that both leaders and employees face. So how are we doing when it comes to advancing women in the workforce? Well, our census, unveiled today, will tell you that significant advances have been made, and especially over the past 20 years. And yet, listen to this. There are signs of continued challenge for women leaders. For example, McKinsey's American Opportunity Survey says that here in Greater Boston, only 47% of women feel fairly recognized and rewarded, compared to 65% of Greater Boston men. That's an 18-point difference and the lowest in the 17 cities that this survey was conducted in. So, while we are watching the racial and gender parity in C-suites and boardrooms, we need to pay attention and nurture the pipeline of women leaders who aspire to be there. Today's Boston Club is multi-sector and regional. We're a community of business and thought leaders. Together, we create and advance women to tables that matter. Our aspiration is to be known for allyship, for building on our legacy of changing the face of the C-suite and boardroom to serve as a force for change, to look for ways in which we can harness our collective agency in support to shine a light on the issues of advancing all women leaders. We are so excited for today's event. In a few minutes, we'll welcome Mayor Wu. We will have a message from her. We will unveil the results of our census. We will have an amazing conversation with our distinguished guests. And later, after our fireside chat, we will hear from Charlie Baker, our governor, and as well, we will be awarding our second annual Women in Business Racial Equity Awards. For now, if you're here in the room, and we're so excited to be back in person, we'd ask to make sure your cell phones are silenced. There'll be index cards around for you to write questions. And the exits are behind you and to the side. And we just hope you all have a great time. For now, I have the honor to introduce a message from Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu. Mayor Wu is a daughter of immigrants, a Boston public school mom, and an MBTA commuter. She was sworn in office in November 2021, the first woman and the first person of color elected to serve in this role, championing a vision of Boston as a green and growing city for everyone. Here's Mayor Wu's message for all of us today.
Hi everyone, it's Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, and welcome to this year's Corporate Salute. Thank you so much to the Boston Club for having me and for holding this space to center the importance of equity in business. Events like this one don't just create opportunities for women to grow and advance as business leaders. You're forging connections and building the kinds of networks and communities of support to last a lifetime. In my own career, I've turned to that network of mentors and friends, women who have opened doors and paved the way for me and so many others, more times than I can count. Your wisdom and guidance has gotten me to where I am today. That's why events and organizations like this one, committed to uplifting and empowering women, are so important. Today we have an opportunity to address gender disparities in representation and uplift more women to more positions of leadership. At the same time, we need to be doing more to build a society that supports and empowers women's success. That means expanding access to high-quality early childhood learning and care, pay equity, guaranteed parental leave, safe, reliable public transit, and affordable housing that is truly accessible to all. Because equity isn't just about bringing people to the table, it's about ensuring access to the tools and resources we need to contribute to that conversation and move it along. And that work starts in spaces like this one. Last year, women held fewer than 10% of CEO positions at Fortune 500 companies and less than a third of board seats in the Russell 3000. And according to last year's Census of Women Directors and Executives, conducted by the Boston Club, we held nearly 28% of board seats here in Massachusetts. All of those numbers were up from the year before, but we have a lot of work to do, especially given the toll the pandemic has taken on working women across the country. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today and for showing up every day, for your organizations, your teams, your customers, and your clients, for the women and girls in your life who rely on and look up to you, for all those you inspire and encourage by demonstrating what's possible. The work of furthering equity in business is work that begins and ends with community. And today, you're strengthening that community. So thank you so much to the Boston Club for bringing so many amazing, visionary women together for today's event. I'm wishing all of you a wonderful, productive event and look forward to working with everyone to create a more representative, more equitable Boston for all of us.
She's so inspiring and sincere. Mayor Wu is dedicated to making Boston a city for everyone. Here at the Boston Club, we build on our legacy of advancing women to be even more inclusive, and including advancing women of color to tables that matter. Our second annual Women in Business Racial Equity Awards are a symbol of our commitment to this allyship. We can't wait to introduce you to the two amazing women we're going to honor this year. For now, please join me in thanking and appreciating our sponsors. These are the companies that share our values. These are the employers that care about our aspiration and vision for diverse women's leadership. Please like them on LinkedIn and patronize their services. These are Akamai as our premier sponsor. Our special thanks to Kim Jackson, Anthony Williams, and the amazing team here at Akamai for all they've done to bring this amazing event. To our presenting sponsors, Amica and Greenbacker. To our patrons, Alchemies, American Tower, EY, Hologic, the RMR Group, TJX. It takes a village to make this happen. To our mentors, Anilum, Biogen, BCG, Cummings Properties, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, Eastern Bank, Forrester, the EOS Foundation, iRobot, Liberty Mutual Insurance, MKS, Progress, Rockland Trust, Sheehan Finney, State Street, Takeda. We see so many of the beautiful people from these companies here with us today. We also wish to thank our ambassadors who also contributed and made this possible, as well as the Friends of the Boston Club. Many of these organizations have supported us for years to bring this vision and mission. Our heartfelt thanks for all their generosity. And now, a moment you've been waiting for, we should have had a drum roll, the unveiling of our 20th corporate census. This is the 20th anniversary and celebration of the Boston Club Census, Onward and Upward. I introduce to you now Cynthia Clark, Professor of Management at Bentley University and author of Giving Voice to Values in the Boardroom, who will unveil the results on gender and racial representation in C-suites and boardrooms in Massachusetts' 100 largest public companies. Cynthia, come on up. Is it progress or is it lack of parity? I give you Cynthia Clark.
Good morning. Can you hear me? I have two mics, actually. So thank you, Lisa. I'm proud to detail some quick highlights of the report you have in front of you of the 100 largest firms in Massachusetts by net revenue. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Tony Wolfman and Pat Flynn, for their tireless work on this effort. This is the 20th year. I'd also like to thank Bentley University and the Boston Club, without whom we wouldn't be able to pull this off. So these will be high-level remarks, because I only have 4 minutes. So please take a look at the report later on for names of people, companies, and other stats like age, turnover, and tenure. So let us start with the records that are set for this year. On boards, we have 88 census companies that now have both gender and racial or ethnic diversity. 58 companies, as you can see, have at least 3 women directors. 4 companies have achieved gender parity. Women hold close to 30% of the board seats in these companies. That's the highest percentage and number, and a significant increase over 2021. A third of the independent directors' positions are held by women. As for executives, 21.5 of the executives of the census companies are women. At 10 companies, women represent 50% of the executive officers. At 16.3, the top paid executives are, in fact, women. However, there is more work to do. One census company continues to have an all-white male board, what we call a 0-0. And that is, unfortunately, after 2 years of consecutive years with no companies that had a 0-0. 25 companies have no women executive officers, and 40 companies have no women among their top paid executives. Yet, over the 20 years, we see that there's some progress, right? First chart here is of women directors. You can see sort of a nice hockey stick. On the next slide, you can see the increase in the number of women on the executive team. Again, this is in the report in front of you. On the next slide, though, we can see of all 100 census companies, a more stark picture remains. In the teal color, we have a high percentage that still is held by white men. So I'm going to conclude with some brief highlights on the last slide. 9 companies have at least 3 women directors and at least 3 women executive officers. And at 15 companies, both gender and racial or ethnic diverse directors account for the majority of the board. And lastly, at 4 companies, at least 50% of the directors are female and have achieved what we call gender parity. So, onward and upward.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And as Cynthia started, we very much want to recognize Patricia Flynn and Tony Wolfman, who founded and stewarded this important, impactful document. And now, to help us explore the connections between business success, a healthy and just society, and women's economic empowerment, please join me in welcoming two trailblazing women leaders who have seats at tables where conversations and relationships change lives globally. Commissioner Sharon Bowen has served as chair of the board of directors of the New York Stock Exchange since December 2021. She is the first woman or person of color to serve as chair. She also chairs the exchange's board advisory council, founded to increase the number of women and diverse candidates who are board ready. Their approach is to use the power of markets, brand, and network to drive change. We are delighted to introduce Julia Dar. Julia joined Boston Consulting Group in 2009. A behavioral economist, Julia champions the use of behavioral insights to make countries and organizations more inclusive, sustainable, and productive. She is deeply involved in the firm's IP development of the future of work. Before joining BCG, Julia worked as the private secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance in New Zealand. Julia is a nonprofit board member, author, and a popular TED Talk speaker. And here today, in place when Wendy Woods was not able to join us, we could not, though, be more delighted to have Julia. And so Julia Dar and Sharon Bowen, you are trailblazers. We are thrilled to have you here for a fireside chat to share your stories. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone here in the room and watching us on our live stream. On behalf of all of the managing directors and partners of Boston Consulting Group, it is my pleasure to be with you here today and for the, I think, very hopeful conversation that we are about to have. Just to architect the next 30 minutes or so for you, Sharon, we're going to talk a little bit about you. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of the public markets and the private sector in shaping a more thriving, just, equitable society. And then we're going to talk about some of the present uncertainty that people might be feeling and the way in which that uncertainty and volatility can also give rise to resilience, can give rise to opportunity if stewarded carefully and thoughtfully. And then, as we flagged at the beginning, there are index cards making their way around. We will turn it over to you, both those of you at home and those of you here in the room, for your questions as well. Thank you, Rita. We appreciate you for waving those around. Sharon, we're kind of in the middle of your story. I think you would say to me, you're just getting started. But take us back to the beginning, like when we think about big law, big finance, public equities. What's changed? What's better?
Well, first I want to thank you for Stephanie to do this today, and also to congratulate the Boston Club and this amazing turnout today. The census especially is important. As you know, what gets measured matters. And so I just want to recognize the great work that you're doing. So, what was your question again?
Yes, I mean, as we celebrate this progress today, can you put that in the context of your own career? Like, what's better? Or at least what's different?
What's different? So I've been really fortunate to have really different positions. You started out as a corporate lawyer. Unlike many lawyers, I actually love the practice of law and did it for 35 years.
Okay, some law fans in the room.
Yes, I really enjoyed it very much. And so initially when I was asked to join the Obama administration with the first election, I said no, because I enjoyed the practice. I loved living in New York, and I said no thank you, no thank you.
Can I just stay on that for a second? You were approached and the administration said, like we hope you might consider serving in one of these roles, and you said, thank you, I'm honored, but no thank you.
Yes. So, I have a habit of saying no and then saying yes. So then about 4 weeks later, 4 weeks later, I got a phone call. They said, okay, we found something for you. You don't have to leave your job. You don't have to move to DC. Would you consider being vice chair of the Securities Investor Protection Corporation? So I said, oh, that's really interesting. I said, well, let me think about it over the weekend. So I hung up, and I immediately like to say, like, what is the Securities Investor Protection Corporation?
Let me look into this.
Let me look this up. So, as it turns out, it's an organization that was founded in the 70s. It's created actually by statute, so it really isn't a federal agency, which is why I was allowed to, stay in my partnership and take on this role. My partners thought it was a great idea. I thought it was a fascinating opportunity, but I didn't recognize at the time. Civic used to be a little bit sleepy. Of course, the minute I was there, we dealt with some of the, we dealt with the largest bankruptcies, Lehman Brothers, Madoff, MF Global. And that experience was eye-opening in so many different ways. I saw the devastating effects of the financial crisis. I saw friends, family members, colleagues lose their jobs, lose their homes, lose their savings. And so we even had a forum where we had investors come to talk to us. So with the second election of President Obama, they said, okay, we love the work you've done at Civic, but would you really consider coming to Washington, D.C. this time? Would you be willing to be a commissioner of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission? I knew what that was, and I knew it was a critical time. And so I'm delighted that I did that. I'm a real proponent of people giving back and doing public service. And so I retired from my partnership to do that. Did that for 3.5 years. And then in my retirement, I thought, oh, let me think about what I want to do next. When I was approached to be on the board of the Intercontinental Exchange and the New York Stock
Classic
Exchange.
retirement job.
Yeah, I know. So I said, well, initially they asked about the New York Stock Exchange. I said, well, at least that's 7 blocks away. I'm a practical person. I've come full circle. I used to be a securities lawyer. The first time I set foot on the stock exchange was I was an intern at Goldman Sachs. So that could be interesting. And so they then said, we want you to be on the parent company board and the board. So I actually stayed as a board member for 5 years. People think I just joined the board, but I actually was on the board for 5 years. And the then current chairman decided to step down. And he said, John, I really want you to take my seat. I said, what seat? He goes, to chair. I said, no, that's not a good idea. That's not a good idea, Jeff. He said, look, you've been coming to board meetings for 4 years. You just move from one seat to the other. You can make as much or as little of this as you want. I know that you love, you're passionate about economic empowerment of women and girls, diversity and inclusion. Use that platform. 40 million people watch the opening and closing bell. Use your platform. And so that was a selling point. And so I said yes, and I'm really happy that I did.
I cannot decide whether your memoir is going to be called Thanks But No Thanks or Yes And. Like, I feel like this is the story of a yes and career.
Can you help me with that?
Yeah. Because I want to read it, I would love to.
I'm looking British because I would be remiss if I didn't recognize my other boards. I'm delighted, obviously, to be here at Akamai headquarters, and delighted. A wonderful board, a company whose values resonates with me. They're just a super corporate citizen in all respects, as well as my new board, which is a private company. So just want to recognize the great work you're doing as well. And back to the memoir.
Well, back to the memoir, exactly. I have the feeling that this is a kind of a career filled with inflection points, like stories where you say, not only am I observing a moment in history, but I'm a participant in economic and financial history. Is there a story, a couple of stories that really stay with you?
So there were, yes, particularly early on in my career. I was a senior corporate associate, and I was assigned to a major transaction leading a team of 20, 25 lawyers for one of our private equity clients. They like today to be all male and all white. So I walked in the room, the head lawyer, and I could immediately see the looks of the 5 men around that table. And so, I kind of noted it in my head and just, went on and did my business and did my great work. And so halfway during the transaction, the client came to me and said, you're one of the best lawyers we've ever had. I said, I know. And, the moral of that story for me has always been, don't let other people keep you from your own success or from your own metric of success. That's devastating for me. And as you can see, it made a difference in my confidence. To be able just to forge ahead and at that time.
And there are parts of that story that are horrifying, obviously.
Yeah.
And parts of it that are hopeful, like this idea that you shouldn't have to be, but that you can be your own fuel, and you can be your own biggest cheerleader.
You also have to realize that people watch. People are noticing what you do. And if you happen to be a woman of color, it's a razor focus on kind of what you do. So you have to be your A game every day. You don't, failure's not even an option. And that's not to say you have to be perfect, because I always tell people, you have to keep working at it. But walk into that door every day knowing that, I'm doing this for me.
Yeah, and for the people who come now and the people who come afterwards as well.
Yes.
Does that happen to you a lot? Like women in public service, public equities?
Yeah.
Like, do people appreciate you for what you have
yes.
done?
Not only that, people ask me, what's your biggest accomplishment? And one of it is watching my mentees succeed. That really is just people that I've helped throughout their careers. And even though I know Kim named a number first, my job is to make sure that there's a second and a third and a fourth. To always be giving back to that next generation. And also, I learned from my mentees. That first phone call from President Obama's office came from a mentee who made that first phone call. So you never know what your mentee may be the next time. I have mentees that were my biggest clients, my biggest fans, and so people are always asking, how can I, find a mentor? And I say, be a good mentee. Do that first. If you're a good mentee, you'll find mentors, and it'll be a role reversal where that mentee is as important, and they are in my life.
Yeah, those roles, eventually, for a while, you'll have a mentor-mentee relationship, and at some point, you're just part of a community.
Yes.
Yeah. We have to ask now, what are your tips? How would someone be a good mentee to you? What differentiates really good mentees?
Yeah.
Other than they say, I'm calling from the president's office, I'd like to offer you a job. What else?
Well, I always tell people you want to be known for something. And so being known for being the one that's prepared. Be known for the person who shows up on time. Be known for the person who sees a coworker struggling to say, I can help. Be the one who says, okay, I'll take that assignment that's going to kill me, or I'm going to miss the holiday. Be that person who sort of takes the extra step. It's really important because it says a couple of things. It says, on one, you're going to be proactive about your career, which is really important. You don't wait for other people to tell you how to be good at what you do. You can be good at what you do by doing it and watching others, obviously. But those are the steps, and just stay curious. I think curiosity is what keeps me, excited about, getting up in the morning.
You have a work anniversary coming up.
I do.
December 17th. It will be 1 year. What did you think the job would be like? Has it been what you thought it would be like?
It's been so much fun. I want to say, tell people how much fun it is.
I don't want people to know
Yeah.
how much fun it is to be a financial regulator.
I know, I'm kind of reversed that way, but it is so much fun. I get to meet some of the most amazing people, from Olympians to politicians, to major CEOs, to Serena Williams, I just get to meet the most fascinating people, and when I walk into that building, the stock exchange is the symbol of capital raising. I mean, it's the place where companies raise funds that creates jobs, that creates innovation. I say, we really are the fuel for the economy. And what's most exciting is the conversations I have with CEOs and their commitment to diversity and inclusion. I'm astonished. I mean, people always say, oh yes, we check the box. Got the DI offices, let's check the box. But so many of the CEOs have gone the next step. And that's been a surprise. And in turn, our job is to make sure, those companies go further along in their journeys. And so what we try to do is to present them with the best tools and practices. And Kim mentioned the Board Advisory Council. I mean, we know one of the ways you get on boards is word of mouth. Who do you know? And so we thought, well, let's have our CEOs nominate 5 women, diverse candidates who are board ready. And today, we launched that in 2019. Today, I'm happy to say we have over 400 candidates who are board ready. So I don't want to hear any CEO saying I can't find some, right? It's all fun.
The Board Advisory Council is such a pragmatic intervention. Like it says, if people are out there saying, oh, there's women, there's diverse candidates, where are they? Like, I'm not sure that we find it convincing that they're hard to find. But you say, okay, like, let me, like, pretend that's true for a moment. Let's
I've got binders.
I've got binders full of have I got a solution for you? There's obviously been an evolution that some CEOs, some boards, like, have been on that journey, and the pressure for that journey can come from a lot of different places. Like it can come from regulators like yourselves, it can come from investor pressure, it can come from employee pressure as well. Like, do you feel like there's one of those forces that's stronger than the other?
Well, one thing I can say for sure, I think the combination of the global pandemic and George Floyd really was a wake-up call for so many companies and so many individuals who had the time to reflect, but also got to see how disproportionately women and people of color were really affected. And people were really sincere about, I'm not sure I'm getting feedback now. People were really, you guys get feedback? Yeah. Can you hear me about this mic? Okay, so maybe that was right. So people were really sincere about like, what can we do? And it became much more than let's check the box. I think I'm fine with this one. Yeah. That's refreshing. Corporations are different today. I mean, we've gone beyond like corporations, your job is to maximize profits, period. You didn't have to have a conscience at all. And, but now corporations are a living, evolving entity. And so not only are you accountable to your investors, as you mentioned, but also every major stockholder, including employees. Companies, people won't work for a company that's not diverse and inclusive, that doesn't have the values. They just won't do it today. The communities where you work, you're not going to come to a community and pollute it and treat its workers poorly or watch people suffering. I mean, you have a conscience as a corporation. And so I think the notion of what is a corporation has evolved in a really healthy way, which is important.
I can imagine that you might be on the receiving end of confidential phone calls from CEOs, boards of directors, who even a year ago, even today, might have said something to you like, we know we need to do better, we know we need to be better, help me, help my organization start. I want to begin, but I don't quite know where to start. If you get those calls, where do you kind of invite people to begin?
So that's one of the reasons we started the Board Advisory Council. So we've really gone beyond just finding diverse candidates, but also I think part of the problem is no one's given a blueprint for how to get there. People have gotten just to the check the box, the chief diversity officer, do you have employee resource groups? Are you writing checks to historically black colleges? Are you adopting the the public school that's underrepresented in your neighborhood. You know, we sort of have done those things, and yet when you look at the C-suite, that hasn't really made a difference. And so the good news is we now have data, like your census, so we can do a much more systemic approach to solving it. Every company's at different points. I mean, some of the major corporations are like way ahead of some of the smaller companies that just did their IPO. And so we recognize that there is no one size that fits all. But we try to use our platform also to share best practices and to shine a light on those companies who are doing things and who are doing it well. And to have a safe forum for CEOs to say, like, this isn't working for me. Like, what should I be doing? And I always tell people, it's like, CEOs and white men in general, they don't wake up in the morning thinking, what can I do today to hold back a woman or a person of color? They're just not, they're not thinking about how can I discriminate today. They don't wake up sort of thinking that. And so, likewise, to be proactive, we need to give them the tools and the mindset, and not just CEOs, but the middle management team, which is where, frankly, most of the barriers are in terms of progress for women and people of color.
And that's such an interesting intervention point for someone in your role. As you said, at the board level and at the senior executive level, it's not regular or appropriate for someone to reach down into that level of the organization. But you're right. That's where the change happens. Do you see some things among the companies that you regulate or in the economy in general that make you optimistic? Like, are we seeing movement there?
I think we are. I mean, again, it's the power of technology and data. We talk about the two drivers that make the corporate world in our society, much better today. Is that transparency that's there. You can't hide, and the numbers don't lie. And if you want to find out, you can do a. Not sure what the feedback. You can do go beyond a pay parity analysis, although that's one thing you should be doing. I mean, you should be paying people the same wages for doing the same job. But at the end of the day, I think we've got the data. We don't have to make the business case anymore for diversity. That was a song and dance that took at least 10 years.
And you really feel we're past that?
We're past that. The data's there, the statistics are there. We're way past that, thank goodness. Even though there were some academics who went back and forth and said, we don't know cause and effect or whatever, but I think it's pretty conclusive now. So we've moved beyond, and I'm hoping that will propel us to go faster. Because, we talked about women leaving the workforce and the great resignation and what can we do? And I think all of us have that concern that are we losing ground and what can we do? I don't have an answer, by the way.
No, neither do we. As BCG wrote a set of analyses in late 2021, early 2022, which found exactly what the Bureau of Labor Statistics, others have found, which is there are, depending on the month you count it, millions of American women who were present in the labor force in March of 2020 who are not present in the labor force today. They have never made their way back into the labor market. And there are good causes for hope, and there are places in some sectors and some geographies in the US, but it's a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
Because even as we track it month over month, it isn't moving.
But your study's really good. I read it, and I encourage you guys to take a look at it as well, because you do focus on using a needs-based metric as opposed to sort of functional solutions, if you will. Because if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same results.
I think that's right, and I think it's unhelpful, or hopefully we are moving the conversation, exactly as you say, beyond where are the women in our workforce, where are the people of color in our workforce, to say, well, what might people need, and how might we as an employer serve them to be able to bring their highest talents, right? And the idea that you talk about women as a group, versus talking about, for example, people with caring responsibilities as a group. It's actually not a very helpful, or it's quite a limited way of segmenting your workforce.
But one of the things that happened too during the pandemic and in the last couple of years, that there are more women entrepreneurs, and I think part of it is all kinds of reasons besides the fact that we're smart and talented. But And besides the fact that, we couldn't get money from private equity firms or banks, despite the fact that our money are in these institutions, and 4% of private equity money, 10% of bank loans were going to women-owned businesses. But we're addressing that hurdle too, which is really, really great. But the growth rate of women entrepreneurs is really exciting. And one of the things I do, which I didn't mention, that also excites me every day, I'm a partner with an organization called Cynical Women, named after Seneca Falls. We're focused on the economic empowerment of women and girls, and we have a marketplace where we highlight women entrepreneurs. So where you can go and shop women-owned, and we use the power of our purchasing power, the pocketbook power, to make a difference. So I think the future of work looks different. And I'm pretty sure a lot of those women entrepreneurs, I'm going to take them public one day, on the stock exchange.
I love that. This idea of saying you can be there for the start of someone's story, like you can be someone's first revenue. I love the idea you say, I look forward to the day that I regulate you.
That means you've arrived.
Yes. I think that, I love like the thought of you walking into the stock exchange and saying, like, here is where opportunity meets stability. Like that's when we think about the American public markets. That's what we hope for.
Absolutely. I mean, just think about the uncertainty with the macro environment. We have to be open every day. The volume of transactions. We thought when we did the first $500 billion of transactions across our platform, in March, that was a big deal. But we've had many days like that. To do that, you've got to have like the best of technology. We think our float model works because we have human judgment that's part of that equation, which you really, really want to during periods of uncertainty when the market's going up and down and up and down. So that kind of resiliency and the transparency. I'm a big fan of transparency. And you need that to have a stable market, to have a fair market, and for investors, who know that there's nothing going behind the wall. You can see the price, every day.
Take us inside that a little bit. And it's one of the things you say all the time is that uncertainty breeds volatility, it breeds activity for you and the organizations that you regulate. But kind of 2 minutes before the bell of the last couple of weeks or the last couple of months, there must have been moments where you said, okay, here we go. Like, let's see what happens. I mean, what's that like on your side of the desk versus for the companies trading on the exchange?
So the good news is we've built a great product that really works. I mean, it just given the transaction volumes, it's amazing. We've had really high highs and some really low lows and a lot of volatility, as you can imagine during these uncertain times. But you're right, we also are a self-regulatory organization, so we have to oversee the orderly market, make sure the market's fair, people are not manipulating the market, et cetera. So we do have a regulatory function as well, and so I'm really confident that's really working well. Because I also serve on our regulatory oversight committee. It's just the excitement. You're right, the last 2 minutes of the day, that's when lots of the action really happens. I always look at you like the opening bells at the beginning of the day, you can go to lunch for 4 hours, come back, come back. Don't tell my colleagues I said this. Don't do it before work, trust me. But for the average broker, they're like, oh, okay, it's 10 to 4. Let me start trading again. That's what it looks like, even though in fact that's not what's happening, but that's kind of what it looks like to the outside observer. But we've got a great combination of technology and human judgment.
One of the things, it's true, I think, it's true for listed companies, it's true for privately held companies. It's a source of frustration, for me at least, is when we talk about ESG and DE&I as part of that conversation, we talk about E, S, and G as though they're all sort of the same thing, and often we give them to one executive, and ultimately they're not the same thing at all. Very different strategies will help us advance on each of these. What do you think it will take for a more sophisticated conversation on each of those?
Yeah, and you do have to unpack the ESG. For sure, and it's one of the reasons why last year we launched our Sustainability Advisory Council, for that reason, because a lot of our companies were looking at, well, particularly as global companies, the disclosure is happening a little bit faster outside of the U.S. than the U.S. But it's there, and how to measure it, and what the standards are, and again, to share best practices. And not every company, I mean, sustainability is a different thing from a company that is in the agriculture business versus the energy business versus the pharma business. Think about the different industries that are out there. Sustainability really means really many different things. So again, we provide that platform. We actually, some of the companies have separated out. I mean, it used to be DI, used to be half a page in your CSR report, and then it got a little bit bigger. And now companies are breaking it out and having a separate diversity and inclusion report and a separate sustainability report, which I think is smart, and I think it makes sense. And they're all equally important, and one shouldn't be subsumed by the other. Investors want that kind of granular data, and we can provide it. And if that's information that's material to an investor in making an investment decision. So I think that's important information that should be out there.
And I think it sends this idea that you have differentiated strategies and differentiated reporting, sends a signal to say, this is not just the other stuff that did not quite make the cut for the annual report, right, that we need to be able to find a way in somewhere. I wonder a little bit about what some of the leading indicators of that will be. And I think for me, one of the things we're tracking is when you start to see separate executive responsibilities. So we say, like, does governance imply a bigger role for the general counsel? Do you end up with specific executives responsible for environmental? You're already starting to see chief diversity officers. I want to move to our questions, and I know that we have one from the live stream and here in the room. Before we do, one final one from me. I feel like when people meet you, is the most frequent question that you get asked, can I ring the opening bell? Do people pitch you all the time?
There's a whole committee that goes to that, so I just refer them.
I've got a friend whose business card I can give you.
Everybody's got a reason why they want to ring the bell.
That's like opening bell at NYSE. Can I turn it over? And I think we have a facilitator who's going to share the questions from the live stream.
Yes, yeah. So for those folks in the room, if you have any questions, if you want to pass note cards down this direction, if you've written any, pass those down. We've got a few folks. Thank you. And we have also, in addition to the room, we have just shy of 300 people joining us on the live stream. They're typing furiously as they have come to questions and answers and so on. So let me pass, and Janet, would you like to ask the first question while I gather some cards? Okay. Let's start here.
All right. So, are there questions you found yourself asking or issues you raised that your male colleagues did not ask or raise?
I would say I always look at things through a different lens because I'm a different person. I'll never forget I was being interviewed by one of the senators as part of the confirmation process, who asked me, as between this guy and this guy, one was liberal, one was conservative, where would you put yourself on the scale? And I said, well, I don't look like them, and I don't think like them. And I think he was very surprised to hear that answer. So that's an example, that's just a specific one. It's like, no, I see the world as a black woman in the world. And I understand why that white male asked the question the way he did, because he can't see the world as a black woman going through the world. But part of my job is to help educate as well.
Yet another yes and moment. I love that.
Well, mostly education by doing, like, I'm not trying to save the souls of, everybody else.
Okay, we have one from our very engaged online audience. What can we do as women to support other women in recognizing their leadership skills and to stop comparing ourselves to the way men lead.
That's why you have this organization. I mean, that's what you guys are doing. And the power of networking and collaboration means, by definition, there's a different way to do this. There's a different way leadership looks. And shining a light, the people who are getting awards today, that's what leadership looks like. And so that's why you need events like this and moments to celebrate, so that we see that it's a different world. You can answer some questions too.
I think there is so much power in not only being a mentor and saying I have been the first, but I think it's also for people saying I have been the second somewhere, and I am someone else's power in numbers, right? And hopefully you are not only the second, but the third and the 10th and the 200th, and that's really powerful. But I think that idea of saying we celebrate the second person at the table who didn't look like all of the people who have come before, and honor that as progress, as a step on the journey.
Absolutely, we have to do it.
Here's another question. Will the New York Stock Exchange adopt a similar requirement as NASDAQ for women on boards?
So one of the reasons we did our board advisory council is, our approach was to let's provide our 2,400 listed companies with the best tools for them to reach their own goals. And we recognize that there's no one size that fits all. I applaud all efforts for diversity and inclusion. However people want to get there, it's fine. We just have taken a different approach in seeing it, providing solutions and tools for listed companies instead. I applaud anybody who can push that in. Let's go for it.
The behavioral scientist in me says there's a place for regulation, for sure, and in terms of creating consistent standards. And along that journey, there is a place for removing barriers for
Yes.
people. You say, okay,
Yeah.
you cannot find any talented candidates. Here's a set of talented candidates. You feel that people need skills to progress from executive leadership to board leadership. There's a role. If true, there's a role for education in doing that as well.
And as a former regulator, I do think the regulator should be attentive to what people think is important when they make an investment decision. So I think it's fine for the agencies to have rules, and in fact, I think most of our societal changes have come about because of laws and regulations. And the beauty of that is that you have consistency and you have a level playing field, and so you're not leaving it up to exchanges and market participants to pick winners and losers, or people deciding I don't want to go public because that exchange wants me to do X.
There's a bigger leadership lesson in there, I feel, of saying there's a role for setting standards, right? For being a role model or for being a requirement setter, depending on the responsibility you have. And if you have done that, there's an opportunity to be an enabler, right? If I'm going to set high standards, how do I help people reach those standards as well?
Absolutely. You got to lead by example too. I mean, I'm proud to say, at the Income Exchange, we're 60% women on our board. 3 of us are women of color. Stock Exchange, we're 60% women. In addition to, Lynn is the second woman president in the history of the Stock Exchange. We have women leading our ICE data services, our clearinghouses, our chief regulatory officer. We have women throughout the leadership. And it makes for a really different company. And there is some truth to the fact, the 3 rule that we got, the conversation changes when there are 3 women in a room. It really does.
Speaking of which, we're seeing a few questions around authenticity as a theme here. How important is maintaining true authenticity as a Black woman in your career? And what types of advantages have you seen or lived for staying authentic?
I wake up the same person every day. I don't walk into a room and become like a different person. I don't try to become that guy. I only know how to walk in my own shoes. And so I wake up every day being me. And I'm pretty much me no matter where I am, even when was a regular lady, even when I was a partner in a law firm, even serving on boards. And I think if you try to be somebody else, it just seems like so exhausting. It's just too hard. It would be too hard. That takes too much work. It would just be too exhausting, but I'm comfortable walking into a room being me.
Along with that form of bravery, you mentioned early on that failure is not an option. Well, this has likely been imposed on you. How have you pushed beyond that? What have you learned from a mistake?
So failure doesn't mean not making a mistake. In fact, you can learn. Those can become teachable moments, and they have been for me. I've made mistakes, and those are teachable moments, but I don't consider that failure. Maybe I shouldn't even use that word failure. So, what I tend to do is to be honest about it and to say like, is it 10 words at me? And often you got to do a reality check, like we all have our own personal board of directors. And you pick up the phone and say, this happened to me. Has this ever happened to you? And typically it's happened to someone else, and then it really isn't you, it really is them. So part of it is surrounding yourself with people whose opinions you value and trust. They can be friends. They don't have to be someone who's in your company necessarily. In fact, some of my biggest personal board directors are people who are not even in this industry at all. Some of them are artists and creative people. They don't watch the financial services market. They don't, no, we can for the closing bell, we'll open it bell. So I think it's, so I don't consider that new failure. Those are just opportunities.
Okay, we're going to do one more, and I think this is a nice closer. What is the best way to increase visibility of women ready for board roles?
Show up at events like this. Tell people you want to be on a board. The Boston Club can, and you guys may already be doing this, but if not, this little suggestion in your head. Create a board readiness program for the women who are part of your, so you guys are doing it already. Then you need to all be involved with the Boston Club. But you have to let people know that you want to serve on a board. They're not, and you have to let everybody know when you're ready to serve on a board. You'd be surprised when one of my boards came from a girlfriend. We're celebrating a girlfriend's birthday, and one of my girlfriends said, like, Sharon, my husband just moved from this company to this company, and they're looking for a board person. I thought about you, like, can I give your name to my husband? I said, yeah, sure. And she did, and that's how I got on the Newburgh Vermin board. It was from celebrating a girlfriend's birthday, and for part of it, if people know, so then their ears are kind of attuned, and so when they hear of opportunities, but you have to have the network too, and you can join all different kinds of organizations now that provide training for board readiness as well. But the biggest thing to do is to tell people you want to serve.
And do you feel like the women people should, you may never feel fully ready? Tell people just before you feel ready, maybe?
Do not wait. I mean, that's another thing. Like, guys are ready, they're born ready.
I've graduated college, I would like to serve on a board.
In their minds, they're born ready. So you don't have to, there's no, when I say be board ready, what does that even mean? It just means knowing something about the industry. Just, again, that sense of curiosity, it kind of shows.
Well, maybe one more closing question for me is there a piece of advice that you have for all of us in the room that we might take back into our organizations today?
I would want to talk about the power of being a mentee and giving back, because that's really been powerful for me as well, and the giving back part, because it pays itself in so many different ways. And it can be people who may not even be in your industry. We all know someone who can help. And so there's no reason why you shouldn't do that. So my advice would be to do that, and also to be passionate about what you do, and you find your purpose and you'll find your power.
I'm taking that away from our conversation as well. I'm going to say be an opportunist. Be an opportunistic contributor and an opportunistic helper.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Please join me and thank you. May I borrow a mic?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are past the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Did you hear that? Yes, personal agency for women leaders is required every day. The look of the 5 men around the table. Don't let others keep you from your own success. The challenge of being on every day. Learning to be a good mentee, being prepared, being on time, having empathy for that colleague who's overworked, raising your hand to say, I'll take that on. Yes, that's the personal agency. And corporations are different today. We have data, we have transparency, we have the ability to share best practices, to bring our voices together to create the change we want to see. Thank you so much. This was so inspiring. We are just so grateful to have you here. I'm a small person and it's a tiny stage, but I can't go any farther over. So please see Julia as well. So, to advance women's leadership, we need allies. Governor Charlie Baker has been an ally of the Boston Club since he was the CEO of a company called Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, when he turned to the Boston Club to ask for help in placing his first woman board member. We had the honor last week of awarding the Women's Leadership Advancement Award to Charlie Baker. We call him Charlie. And so here, he could not be with us today. He's in Florida at a convention, I hear. And so he sent a few words.
Hey, this is Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, and I'm very sorry that I can't be with you all in person today to celebrate the Boston Club and the incredible work it does on behalf of women in business, nonprofits, government, and beyond here in the Commonwealth. I think many of you know I've been a longtime supporter of the Boston Club. I served as the chair of its corporate advisory board and served on its corporate advisory board for several years when I was the CEO at Harvard Pilgrim. And we also relied on the Boston Club to help us find new directors when other directors termed out. And that's why this particular award, the Award for Leadership in the Advancement of Women, means so much to me, and I'm so grateful to have been given this opportunity to celebrate that and to say thank you here today. I think it's critically important that women have a seat at every table. And as a leader in both the public and private sectors, we've worked hard over our time here in state government and during my time at Harvard Pilgrim to make sure that we got the wisdom of women in every capacity. About half the folks who served on our leadership group at Harvard Pilgrim were women, half the folks that served on the board when I was at Harvard Pilgrim were women, and about half the folks who serve in our senior staff and in our cabinet here are women. And that's not an accident. I mean, let's face it, everybody in Massachusetts has a point of view, and I've heard them all. But I think in many ways, one of the things we tried very hard to do as an administration was to bring a lot of voices to the table so that we would get the best advice and the best recommendations, and frankly, the best commitment to following through that we possibly could on behalf of the people we were serving. And that meant we needed to have a significant presence of women in our leadership roles, and I believe we've done just that. Since the beginning of our term, we've appointed nearly 2,000 women to the administration's boards and commissions. That's more than 50% of all the appointments we've made, and about half of the judicial candidates that we've recommended to the Governor's Council, who eventually went on to become judges, are also women. It is the foundation to some extent for how you build success, by making sure that you have women serving in key positions, because they bring knowledge and, most importantly, professional and life experience to the table that's critical to the success of the Commonwealth, Harvard Pilgrim, the Boston Club, and every other organization. And that's why we're so supportive of the Boston Club in the first place. It's why we appreciate the work you do, keeping score on how organizations and businesses are doing here in Massachusetts with respect to recognize the importance of putting women in key positions. And it's why I believe the Boston Club is such an important asset to all of us here in the Commonwealth. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Again, I'm really sorry I couldn't be there, but you do me a great honor by offering me this award, and I gratefully accept it. Thank you.
We'll have you here next year, and we are having a great day. What is allyship? What is an ally? When I was a girl in 1976, my father's work moved us overseas from our company town to Rome, Italy. Being an American in an Italian neighborhood made me a curiosity to the Italian kids. One day, 11-year-old Patrizia next door invited me to a pool party. We entered, the children circled around, speaking Italian. "Where is she from?" asked the boy. "Stati Uniti," said Patrizia. I realized they were talking about me. I got kind of flustered. I honestly couldn't tell you what else followed until, "Why is her jacket so ugly?" asked a girl. "Shh," said another. "Don't worry," said Patrizia. "She can't understand what you're saying." Their curiosity faded away. They all peeled off, and I spent the rest of the evening alone at the margins. I learned that being different can mean being alone, and being alone, when it's not by your choice, is lonely. Looking back, I realized I hadn't had opportunity to practice Italian, so speaking was a privilege that I could not share. Today, my friend Vernee Myers is famous for her saying, "Inclusion is being brought to the party. Belonging is being asked to dance." When we think of allyship, think of all the facets: gender, race, LGBTQ+. How about thinking differently, neurodiversity? How about mental health challenges that we have to hide every day? Our opportunities as women leaders to include, there's a kaleidoscope of ways to bring out the best of our talents and help everyone belong. Here at the Boston Club, we're a community of women leaders. Our vision, our hope, our aspiration is to live allyship as a verb, to use our opportunity and privilege to support, advance, amplify those who have been on the margins. An ally brings you to the party, teaches you Italian, and tells you what to wear in advance. In 2021, we inaugurated our first Women in Business Racial Equity Awards. The recipients will have funded and managed or owned an enterprise and demonstrated a commitment to the advancement of women. This award will recognize 2 women leaders in the business community who have each developed successful enterprises that demonstrably support all women through access to jobs, mentorship, and community support. One leader identifies as a woman of color. The other is a leader with a track record of supporting equity and racial justice. Please join me in welcoming 2 amazing women who are the 2022 winners. They'll come up in a moment. Here she is. Yes. We are so thrilled to announce that Colette Phillips is the winner of our Women of Color Business Award. We had so many amazing nominees, nominated not just from within the Boston Club, but from our partners at AIM and other organizations, and we thank them for participating. So, who is Colette Phillips? The president and CEO of Colette Phillips Communication. In the midst of the pandemic and America's racial reckoning, she created Get Connected, a business ecosystem to support BIPOC businesses and professionals of color, including the groundbreaking GK Market and GK Fund, which provided exposure, capital, and opportunities for small businesses to grow during and scale post-pandemic. She also founded GK Executive Search, focused on helping companies diversify their C-suites and boards. The company served as the lead agency for the groundbreaking and award-winning All-Inclusive Boston campaign in partnership with other organizations to reimagine and re-energize Boston's tourism and image. Colette received so many awards, I could not list them all here. I do want you to know her new book is The Includers, The 7 Traits of Culturally Savvy Anti-Racist Leaders, How White Allies Can Be Real Advocates in Their Workplaces and Communities. It will be out in the fall of 2023. Colette currently serves on the advisory board of Eastern Bank, among others, and is a mentor and advisor to Conexión, a mentoring organization for mid-level Latino professionals, and a mentor for entrepreneurs who are the grantees of the GK Fund. Our member Carmen Fields, who nominated Colette, says this: "The company consistently gives high priority to giving back to the community and advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are few in this area who have steadfastly beat the drum for the necessity of a diverse, inclusive Boston and its benefits." Please join me in honoring Colette Phillips. Our Ally Award, who I'm gonna guess speaks Italian. Am I right? A little poco. Jill Mendevau is the Ellen Matilda Poss Director of the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston. Under Jill's leadership, the ICA has grown its audience and impact and welcomes over 250,000 visitors annually. It has transformed into a collecting museum with a commitment to diversity. The majority of artists in the museum's collection identify as women and/or artists of color. I had a chance to meet Jill for the first time in the green room. I used to live over here at MIT on the river, and what decade? What year was it? The ICA was on Boylston Street above Precinct 16. I was new to the area. I happened to wander in, and your exhibits changed me to see and feel the stories of those artists of color, and that was decades ago. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Jill asked what was needed, and the Watershed, a facility she transformed into a flexible space for immersive works and community events and made free to the public, was transformed to be a distribution site for fresh food and art kits for East Boston families. What you notice in Jill's history, she collaborates with so many organizations to make these things possible, and through that collaboration, over 50,000 people were served. Most recently, the ICA was awarded the commission for the U.S. Pavilion at the prestigious Biennale Arte 2022 in Venice, Italy, by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, presenting the work of the celebrated contemporary Black artist Simone Leigh. For over a year, the ICA worked closely with the artist Simone Leigh and many partners and organizations on this massive global endeavor. This is the first time the U.S. Pavilion will be entirely dedicated to the experiences and contributions of Black women. Like an ally, Jill wrote back to us saying she's excited to receive this award because it shines a light on the artists, on the programs, the staff and boards, having been long focused on radical welcome, representation, and visibility for women artists and artists of color. And in the spirit of allyship, when Jill learned of the award, she said, "This shines a light on our collective work." Please join me in thanking and congratulating Jill Mendez-Vaz.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your words.
Welcome to stay.
We'll stay. We'll spend the day.
We have so many people to thank for today. These are the women who brought you the Women in Business Racial Equity Awards, which we inaugurated last year under the leadership of our member, Stephanie Brown. Where are you, Stephanie? Thank you so much. And to each one of these women who have served as allies in making this happen, how could we not thank and give an amazing round of applause? Next slide. You're wondering who we're going to applaud for. Who is it going to be? It's going to be the amazing committee that brought this amazing event together. Rita and Bob, stand up. Rita and Bob Ryan. And this amazing team who have worked tirelessly. They cannot put together, cannot sleep. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We have to thank again the amazing Akamai team, Kim Salem Jackson, Anthony Williams, Khalil. Is Khalil here? Heard wonderful things about you. We thank you for this amazing venue and the opportunity to be here. We thank the team that brought this to you, our partners, Dig Innovations, Infinity Portrait Design, and Allison Beatty Designs. We also want to thank, maybe we stay on this page for a moment. We want to thank Marlene Favaloro, Sheila Lang, again to Allison Beatty, to the amazing Mary Lisa Lobello. Where are you, Mary Lisa? I know you're shy. We don't care. We want you to come over there for a good round of applause and thanks. Mary Lisa is this shy. She won't come. Okay. But we're thanking you anyway. And finally, we do have a special award that we're not well positioned to give, so we'll make sure that it's maybe visible. But to Tony Wolfman, who's up there, Patricia Flynn, where are you? I saw you coming in. And Patricia Flynn, can we please have a standing ovation for these women for 2 decades of focus on parity in the boardroom and C-suite. We have a beautiful award for you down here. We'll make sure we get it to you in a minute. So, have we inspired you today? Has there been something that changed your perspective, gave you some confidence, lets you know you're connected in a sisterhood of women who care about the pipeline of advancing women leaders. Here's a QR code. It's also in, Babs made sure that I said it's also in your programs. So if you'd like to learn more about the Boston Club, if you'd like to be part of co-creating, we're a community of women leaders, and we are, as you can see, engaging in and launching our allyship series and looking to catalyze more conversations like this, build more relationships, advance all women to all the tables that matter. So we end where we began. Is the path to both business success and a healthy, just society through women's economic empowerment? Yes, and. Thank you. Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Congratulations. A great turnout. This is terrific.
Thank you so much.
You did a terrific job.
Julia.
Step row.
Oh, you may. And you too.
Yes, of course.
It's to have jumped in at the last moment like that, right?
How could I have missed it?
Because you're brilliant.
Oh, you're very kind.
Yes, and that is your new book.
Yeah.
And this
Yes,
is your
You're
coach
gonna be
and
my
editor.
memoir
She
writer?
is.
Okay.
She is.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yes, let's.
As they're leaving.
That's okay. It's still the illusion.
The illusion.
My world is the business of the illusion. Thank you so much.